left can't meme. You've all heard that before, surely. In fact, it's so often repeated that the phrase itself has become a meme. It's even got a page on Know Your Meme. That's when you know you've made it as a meme. The idea that the left can't meme first popped up in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election. Internet memesters were shitposting about Trump running for president on 4chan's poll and Reddit's The Donald in a half-serious manner, while mainstream political commentators for both the Democrats and the Republicans stuck to the more professional forms of analysis. But eventually, the shitposts started to become real. I recall when Donald Trump himself retweeted a YouTube video from the Can't Stump the Trump series, which was basically just a bunch of meme edits of various Trump happenings on the campaign trail. Trump posted an image of himself as Pepe the Frog along with the video, causing the internet to basically lose its collective mind. He knows, guys, he knows the memes, he sees us, he's a memester like we are! It was a wild moment for sure. This was the beginning of meme magic, the idea that if you meme something hard enough on the internet, it'll manifest in real life, as if shitposting were a form of voodoo or something. Yeah, I know the phrase meme magic comes from before the Trump era, but it's Trump that made the idea widespread. In the point of view of the pro-Trump memesters, because the left can't meme, the left doesn't have access to meme magic. And so the left's reality fails to be true, while the right's reality flourishes. Over on 4chan, one of the earliest uses of the left can't meme idea lays out the hypothesis more clearly. Our memes work because they're actually true. I do want to examine this idea, but first, what is a meme anyway? The term meme was first coined by the biologist Richard Dawkins in his 1976 book The Selfish Gene. In the book, he writes,
"Cultural transmission is analogous to genetic transmission in that, although basically conservative, can give rise to a form of evolution. Fashions in dress and diet, ceremonies and customs, art and architecture, engineering and technology all evolve in historical time in a way that looks like highly speeded up genetic evolution, but has really nothing to do with genetic evolution. As in genetic evolution, though, the change may be progressive. There's a sense in which modern science is actually better than ancient science. Not only does our understanding of the universe change as the centuries go by, it improves. What, after all, is so special about genes? The answer is that they are replicators. The gene, the DNA molecule, happens to be the replicating entity that prevails on our own planet. There may be others. If there are, provided certain other conditions are met, they will almost inevitably tend to become the basis for an evolutionary process. But do we have to go to distant worlds to find out other kinds of replicator and other consequent kinds of evolution? I think that a new kind of replicator has recently emerged on this very planet: human culture. We need a name for the new replicator, a noun that conveys the idea of a unit of cultural transmission or a unit of imitation. Meme comes from a suitable Greek root, but I want a monosyllable that sounds a bit like gene. I hope my classicist friends will forgive me if I abbreviate meme to meme. If it is any consolation, it could alternatively be thought of as being related to memory, or to the French word meme. Examples of memes are tunes, ideas, catchphrases, clothes fashions, ways of making pots or of building arches. Just as genes propagate themselves in the gene pool by leaping from body to body via sperms or eggs, so memes propagate themselves in the meme pool by leaping from brain to brain via a process which, in the broad sense, can be called imitation. If a scientist hears or reads about a good idea, he passes it on to his colleagues and students. He mentions it in his articles, in his lectures. If the idea catches on, it can be said to propagate itself, spreading from brain to brain.
Basically, the word meme describes cultural ideas passed between people, who imitate what they've seen. The ideas are subject to evolution-like pressures, based on how transmittable it is. More popular ideas catch on and inhabit the minds of millions, while less popular ideas don't catch on and disappear from the collective whole of human knowledge, or at least they become a lot more rare. By the way, this is one of the reasons that the libertarian free marketplace of ideas doesn't really work as well as people think it does, at least as a truth-finding mechanism. It works very well to determine what ideas are the most transmittable, but it's not that hard to think of an uncomfortable truth getting outcompeted in the marketplace of ideas by a comforting lie. A market mechanism selects for what people want, not for what is true or real. When desire and truth aren't in alignment, the truth regularly loses. An internet meme is a cultural idea that spreads extremely rapidly due to the internet. Viral videos, catchphrases, remixed images, or snippets of music. Anything that carries cultural significance, is easy to understand at a glance, and can be quickly shared and comprehended, has the potential to develop into a popular internet meme. The earliest internet memes, at least as far as I know, are things like the dancing baby gif, or the O'Reilly owl, or all your bass. Stuff like this was considered cute or funny, so it got shared around a lot, and there's not much more to it than that. There have been multiple eras of memes, like the late 2000s, where top and bottom text images were everywhere, to the dank era of the early 2010s, and the deep fried era of the late 2010s. These images back then, when they were relevant, were really funny because everyone was in on the iterative nature of the meme. We had seen hundreds of prior versions of the meme. We intuitively understood the joke, and so each new edition was not only entertaining, it helped bolster the meme's place in the cultural canon. Looking at these images nowadays, they don't really evoke the same kind of laughter anymore, but rather the memory of laughter. Like, I recall finding this funny once, and why I did, and I have good memories, but I also know that their time has passed. Like regular memes, internet memes change due to selection pressure, a form of digital evolution, best expressed by, you guessed it, this meme. At the top, there's a bunch of rage comics from the late 2000s and early 2010s. Most of these began as MS Paint reaction images on 4chan. As the meme cycle moved on, the majority of these fell out of use, with the two surviving exceptions being the troll face and the Wojak. However, there was still that desire among memesters to express those emotions in meme form, so new memes were created with the troll face and the Wojak as their baseline. This pattern of meme reproduction follows a mass extinction event, followed by the survivors expanding to fill new niches. It's actually remarkable just how well this image gets the point across. What all of this tells us is, 1. Internet memes are more successful if they're easy to understand and reproduce. 2. They're more successful if they're also useful as a shorthand representation of a more complicated idea. And 3. They're more successful if they're funny. Notice once again that truth is not a part of the equation here. If a meme is true, that's certainly good, and a meme's truth value might be one variable in how desirable it is to transmit, but that's not guaranteed. It's not hard to think of memes that are funny and found everywhere, but ultimately false. In fact, there are entire genres of memes where the whole point of the meme is to explicitly be not true to the point of absurdity, and they are therefore successful due to that humor. So when people say the left can't meme, what they're actually saying is, the left cannot create a cultural work that is funny, easy to understand, easy to reproduce, and is a shorthand representation of a more complicated idea. In fact, most of the examples of failed leftist attempts to make memes, literally known as leftist memes, are just giant fucking walls of incoherent text. These long passages fail on every criteria. They're not funny, they're hard to understand, even harder to reproduce, and they're not a shorthand representation of a more complicated idea. They are literally just the more complicated idea expressed in long form. It's for this reason that the leftist meme itself became a meme. Right-wingers routinely repost large walls of text written out by lefties, often shrunk down to minuscule sizes, and contrast them with their own right-wing meme, which is generally short, simplistic, and often extremely edgy or inappropriate. One of the most straightforward examples I've seen of this playing out is of this use of the "don't tap the sign" meme. Taken from The Simpsons, usually the sign from the show is replaced with a quick, easily understood phrase, a dozen words max. But in this leftist meme, the sign's a whole paragraph. When this was accurately identified as a leftist meme on Twitter, its creator replied by saying, "The I refuse to read it because it disagrees with my preconceptions mentality is a disease. Right-wingers are brain dead." And the counter reply was simply, memes are supposed to be funny, not a shitty commie manifesto. In other words, it's not short, it's not funny, and it's not transmittable. There's significant memetic overlap between the leftist meme and the Virgin vs. Chad meme, specifically the animated one, where the Virgin is blabbering incoherently, spewing tons of garbage from his mouth, desperately trying to explain his position, while the Chad just sits there saying nothing, allowing his natural aura of superiority to convince people without even lifting a finger. The subtext is pretty clear here. Talking is for cucks. If you have to explain yourself, you've already lost the debate, while the winners exude virtue from their being. The very universe itself shifts into alignment with their view of reality. It's the same sort of thing with the smooth brain meme. Wrinkly brains are more capable of thought, which means more explanation, which means more words, which means less meme potential, while the smooth brain is simple. Less thoughts, less words, short forms, memes. Now, all of this stuff is pretty funny, but why does it work this way? That one anon over on 4chan back in 2016 said it was because leftist memes aren't in alignment with the truth, however rightist ones are. And yet, we already know that a meme's truth value is not why it propagates. Here's a more detailed explanation of that idea from a different 4chan anon from 2020. It's not that the left can't meme per se, it's that their viewpoints rely on a carefully constructed denial of reality, to a far greater extent than any of the cults or religions they seek to supplant. This doesn't lend itself to simple, easily conveyed messages, because if you rely on your viewers to see things as they are, without providing several layers of carefully selected context, they'll interpret it the wrong way. The left can't meme, because memes are the antithesis of how they communicate. This is a very interesting idea. It does explain why leftist memes are giant blocks of text. All that additional context necessary to understand the meme is not already a part of the common cultural zeitgeist, and yet it still has to be understood in order to make the meme funny, shorthand, and transmittable. So the leftist meme has to include that context in the meme itself, which necessarily bloats it up, destroying its memetic potential. Of course, sometimes you do get left-leaning people who actually try to make something truly memetic by actually drawing on the previously existing cultural canon, rather than forcing the necessary context into the meme itself. At least some of these attempts come from the political cartooning space, and they end up looking like this. What is actually being portrayed here? Well, we've got two Trump supporters, both of whom holding assault rifles. One has the MAGA hat and the Confederate flag, the other has a swastika and a QAnon symbol. These are the ideological opponents of the cartoonist, but he's not actually replying to any idea here. He's simply depicting his enemies as freakishly inhuman, unknowable, only fit to be objects of ridicule. Compare this to the right-wing cartoonist Stone Toss. I don't align with Stone Toss's politics at all, I don't like him, but he's popular even outside of right-wing circles, because he understands that art needs to be saying something, even if you disagree with that thing. This is why so many Stone Toss comics end up as memes, because there is meaningful content found within them. Look at this one for example. A leftist smugly says to a libertarian, "But the government has tanks and jets. How do you beat that?" While the next panel shows tanks and jets retreating from some Middle Eastern location, with vaguely Arabic or Muslim guys waving goodbye. Both of these comics rely on prior cultural knowledge, but the former is a simplistic mockery of Republicans. This type of humor generally isn't appreciated outside of the strict in-group it's made for. Meanwhile, the latter is actually saying something using that prior cultural knowledge. The stereotypical leftist and libertarian are easy to identify, and neither are visually dehumanized, despite Stone Toss's own political leanings. The context of the single sentence we get, plus the libertarian holding his hunting rifle, tells us that we've been dropped into the middle of a debate on gun control. Libertarians believe the purpose of the Second Amendment is to fight a tyrannical government if necessary, while the progressive argument is that the Second Amendment is outdated because modern states have access to significantly stronger weapons than guns. And the punchline of the comic is that those modern states, with their stronger weapons, ended up losing to other guys who only had guns, like for example America and Afghanistan. The point is, even when a meme is left-leaning, and it's in a format other than the giant wall of text, it often still fails to represent any sort of meaningful idea worth propagating. Meanwhile, other times, lefties sabotage their own message. This is another cartoonist example, but it's the most stark one I've ever seen of this next phenomenon. There's a lefty comic guy named House of Decline. He put out this comic back in 2024. There's a kid selling lemonade. In the first panel he says, "I'm tired of not selling any lemonade." In the second panel, he renames his product to Anti-Woke Lemonade. Suddenly in the third panel, a bunch of bearded, sunglasses-wearing white guys show up, saying they all want lemonade. And in the final panel, the kid says, "This feels wrong, but the money kinda helps." One of House's fans, who is also a lefty himself, crossed off most of the text from the comic and said, "I'm on my knees begging leftist comic artists to stop adding unnecessary text. Holy shit." House responded by just reaming into this guy unnecessarily. There was really an air of "how dare you criticize me in public" in this back and forth. However, if you actually take the unnecessary text out of the comic, it actually works really fucking well. Once again, forget your own political views. It doesn't matter whether you agree or not with the message. Look at how it's being presented. Panel 1, the kid is sad, alone. He's framed to appear very small. Without words, we can tell that business isn't going well. Panel 2, he writes anti-woke on his sign. Panel 3, all the guys are showing up to buy lemonade. We don't need to know what they're saying. Their facial expressions, plus the fact there's so many of them, get the point across. And panel 4, kid looks at the money in his hand with a bit of disgust. The same idea is being transmitted with no dialogue, and it's so much better because we're not being told it, we feel it. I think this might be why the phenomenon of over-explaining or having unnecessary dialogue or jokes in modern movies is considered to be leftist coded in our culture. Even in an instance where an idea doesn't actually have to have all of its context included, that urge to create the leftist meme, the wall of text, it still remains. By the way, after this edited version of House's comic was posted to Twitter, and everyone universally agreed that it was far better than his original work, House of Decline began this multi-day-long crash out, screaming that everyone was just a stupid right-wing chit who didn't like to read. Talk about being fucking sensitive. At this point, I've explained why the left can't meme, but there's still that one other variable that we've been ignoring this whole time, isn't there? That pesky truth business. Yeah, memes don't need to be true to be successful, and when memes were just funny jokes, that was fine. But we're far beyond that point now, aren't we? Memes shape people's view of the world. Hell, that's part of the meme magic thing. But if the meme is false, what does that say about how that meme shapes your view of the world? For example, think back to when Trump said, "They're eating the dogs and cats," with regards to the Haitian migrants in Springfield. And that turned into a meme, getting reposted on the internet constantly and being remixed into songs and laughed at. It was pretty funny. But it wasn't just funny. People actually began to believe it. Like, for real, they didn't think it was a joke. They thought it was actually happening. I did a video on the Haitian Springfield thing already, so I won't go too deep into it, but the source of the claim that it was actually happening was, 1, a picture of a Haitian migrant carrying a dead goose or a duck or something home from the park. Which, yeah, that's pretty fucking weird. Grabbing dinner at the park is not the same thing as hunting for it in the woods, but it's still not someone's pet. And 2, a Facebook post on the town's page, where one local woman complained that her neighbor's daughter came home to find her cat killed, which actually turned out to be a rumor that the neighbor's daughter had heard about the cat of a friend's acquaintance. Multiple investigations into the story have been conducted, and to date, there is no evidence that there was ever any sort of pandemic of Haitian migrants stealing people's private pets and eating them. That just didn't happen. However, because it was a funny meme, people believe that it did. Even after J.D. Vance himself said on camera that he would make up stories if necessary in order to get eyeballs on actual immigration problems.
The American media totally ignored this stuff until Donald Trump and I started talking about cat memes. If I have to,
But it wasn't just a meme,
create stories so that the American media actually pays attention to the suffering of the American people, then that's what I'm going to do, Dana, because you guys are completely letting Kamala Harris coast.
You just said that this is a story that you
Yes.
created. So the eating dogs and cats thing is not accurate.
Dana, it comes from firsthand accounts from my constituents. I say that we're creating a story, meaning we're creating the American media focusing on it. I didn't create 20,000 illegal migrants coming into Springfield thanks to Kamala Harris's policies. Her policies did that, but yes, we created the actual focus that allowed the American media to talk about this story and the suffering caused by Kamala Harris's policies.
Now, to Steelman Vance's position here, he could be saying that he didn't create the story, as in fake the whole cats and dogs getting eaten thing. Rather, he means that he's creating the story in the sense of it being a part of the news cycle. That's certainly how Trump supporters interpreted this. However, that's ultimately false. Vance claimed in the clip he's drawing upon first-hand accounts, but none of those leads ever actually panned out. There is just no evidence for his claim. So Vance is either knowingly lying, or he got hoodwinked. However, in terms of the story's memetic potential, it doesn't actually matter. These guys are very aware it's a fake story, that it propagates because it's funny despite being false. They just don't care. Like, for example, listen to Tucker Carlson talk about this back when it was making the rounds.
So that was the first thing I noticed. The second thing I noticed is what Trump said about people eating pets. And there were two levels on which to enjoy this. Well, the first one, I literally enjoyed it. People were like, I can't believe Trump accused people of eating pets. I was like, that's the point. I love him. It's just hilarious. Who would ever say that? They're eating all the pets. Oh, so great. Thank you, Donald Trump. That was awesome. Because first of all, it makes all the great people mad. Like anyone getting red in the face over pet eating. That's not true. That's never happened. No one's ever eaten a pet. Okay. You just doubted yourself. You're a liar. So that's the first thing. The second thing is now we're talking about eating pets. And so now that we are, let me just count myself as opposed. Note that if PETA doesn't endorse Trump in the next 24 hours, they're totally fraudulent.
He's got a lot to say about how funny it is, but not a single peep about whether or not the team he supports is actually telling the truth. The excuse of, oh, it's just a joke, that Trump sure is a funny guy, that was fine before he got into politics. He was an entertainer, but that's not Trump's job anymore. If Biden or any other Democrat went on stage and told a lie this bold-faced, Tucker would not be laughing about how triggered so many people are. In fact, he would be the triggered one, screaming into his microphone about how unpresidential Biden's acting. How dare he make a joke? In fact, we already saw that happen. During Biden's term, when he leaned into the Dark Brandon meme, you had Republicans all across social media shitting themselves, saying, oh, it's not a joke, it's not a meme, oh my god, he's actually a dictator. Sorry, but I thought we were pro-comedy here, guys. Aren't we just memeing? Okay, here's the real point of all of this. Look at how much stuff I had to go over to just explain the actual truth of what happened here. The original meme itself takes about 2 seconds to say.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats.
Trump's statement is short, funny, and transmittable. But explaining how the meme is false, well, that took me several minutes. That's a verbal wall of text. In setting the record straight, I've created a leftist meme right inside this video. This is why I don't think the 4chan explanation that the left can't meme because the left is not in alignment with reality is actually true, at least not consistently. Obviously, there are many right-wing memes that are also true, but that's not a given. If the truth requires a complicated explanation, then the truth will never actually be memetic, especially if a corresponding falsehood is highly transmittable. In essence, the meme appeals to the smooth brain. It feels true even though it's not, because it's easy, while the actual truth cannot be memed. It has to actively be thought about. However, it's my personal belief that the truth does eventually catch up one way or another. It might take time, too much time for any one meme cycle, but it usually eventually gets there. And depending on when and how it gets there, it can sometimes create its own type of meta meme. Go back to the Haiti Springfield example again. The truth of that situation came out long after the meme cycle had moved on, and the Trump auto-tunes about dogs and cats getting eaten had become a thing of the past.
They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
That's why it's harder to convince people who genuinely believe that it happened that it didn't happen, even if you have the evidence in your hand, because the meme became a part of the common cultural canon. It feels true even though it's not. And once something becomes a part of the common cultural canon, future memes can draw upon it. And when you stack up enough false memes in the canon, something about the way that memes propagate begins to change. For example, listen to this clip from J.D. Vance.
There's this crazy idea in the Democratic Party that if you just repeat insane ideas, eventually the American people are going to believe them.
Now that's pretty fucking rich, considering that repeat insane ideas until people believe them is literally what meme magic is. It is the force that has propelled Trump's movement this far, at least culturally. And it's also why guys like Vance complain when their lies are immediately rebuffed in real time, because they recognize it as an attempt to cut the meme magic off at the knees.
Just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank
Margaret,
you.
The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check.
These guys aren't interested in telling you the truth. They just want you to get in line. They repeated eating the dogs and cats until it turned into a meme and became part of the shared cultural fabric, even though it's false. And that's not the only meme it happened with. For example, Doge was a meme for a while. Everyone was posting Doge memes, Elon memes, having a good time. But what was the actual truth underneath the meme that was being transmitted? Well, the promise was that Doge was going to find $2 trillion in waste, fraud, and abuse. They didn't. They came back with $150 billion in various budget cuts. And ever since Doge has fallen off the center meme stage, the agencies it butchered have been quietly rehiring all of their purged staff, because it became clear that what was cut was actually more essential than they first thought. And then Trump signed a budget into law that massively increased government spending anyway, making the whole thing a waste of time. It doesn't actually matter that the Trump administration lied to people. They promised $2 trillion and completely failed to deliver. Because the meme had its day in the sun, and now it's been cycled out. The actual truth of Doge just isn't important, not when it comes to the meme of Doge. And the meme, despite being false, is now set into our common cultural canon. Or how about Trump's claim that Canada was letting in guns and drugs and illegals through America's northern border, as if it were somehow the same situation as the southern border, a claim that was used to justify retaliatory tariffs. That also ended up being entirely false. Less than 1% of the fentanyl smuggled into America comes over the northern border. And Canada actually receives way more guns and illegals from America than vice versa. Once again, it didn't really matter that it was false. It was simply deployed to justify the next thing. And by the time the truth caught up, the meme cycle had moved on. Or hell, how about the Trump rug pull? The idea of a crypto rug pull became a meme because it's been done so often by so many shady people that on its own, it's become a part of the cultural canon. Just real quick, the idea of a rug pull is using cryptocurrency to steal money from people. Let's say I start advertising DevCoin, a new cryptocurrency. It's backed by me, my channel. If you're a Dev fan, you know I'm trustworthy. So your confidence in DevCoin is correlated with your appreciation of my work. Let's say that 10% of the total number of DevCoins begin to be sold on the open market at a starting price of $1, while I hold the remaining 90% for myself. As all of my fans begin to buy and trade DevCoin, the coin value goes up as they outbid each other. Let's say it gets to $100 per DevCoin, $99 profit per coin. At that point, I begin selling my 90% of the DevCoin supply at the market rate of $100. Everyone else begins to buy my DevCoins, so I start raking in all this money, while the price of DevCoin on the market tanks due to massively increased supply. Once I've made all this money, I pull out of the project, leaving all the people I just sold to holding basically worthless DevCoins. This is a rug pull, where somebody uses their reputation to inspire confidence in a new crypto. Buyers inflate the price, and then backers pull out and take the buyer's money with them. This has been done so often in so many ways it's become a meme. Shitcoins, meme coins, NFTs. There's been tons of ways this has rolled out over the past 5 years or so. So, when Trump did his own rug pull with Trump Coin and raked in millions of dollars off the back of his most diehard supporters, yes, that actually fucking happened. What was the response? How did MAGA cope with getting fucked over by their leader? They just called it a meme. It's a meme coin, guys! Like, they were all just pretty open about it being a fucking scam, and nobody gave a shit that it was a scam because they called it a meme coin. Calling something a meme has become this ultimate shield during the Trump era. Just call everything a meme nowadays, guys. If you say you're memeing, you can get away with pretty much everything. Like, let's say I decided to ass rape you. You might be mad at me for that. But if I said, oh, it's just a meme, bro, I'm just memeing, I guess we're all good. That logic used to be a joke, but it's unironically being deployed nowadays by some MAGA people. It's fucking wild. However, my point here isn't that the word meme is being used to excuse any terrible behavior, no matter how degenerate, although it is. My actual point is that each one of these events, where Trump or MAGA was wrong, or they were false, or they were lied to, or they lied themselves, they were immoral, or in any other way negative, they nonetheless became a part of the cultural canon, which means they can now be drawn upon in the creation of new memes. And believe it or not, sometimes the left actually can meme, just as long as adequate cultural canon has been set into place, and it's drawn upon in a sufficiently transmittable fashion. Back in 2023, a soy jack was edited to have a Fell for It Again award pinned to his chest. This was kinda funny, but it ultimately just faded away into the gigantic sea of soy jack memes, not really getting all that much use. However, it broke out of the background and became its own meme subtype in November of 2024, when somebody added a MAGA hat on the soy jack's head. This meme's first use was in response to the news that Trump was nominating a George Soros affiliate to his Treasury Department. The meaning of the meme is obvious. MAGA views George Soros as a member of the globalist deep state cabal that has subverted America, and so Trump nominating one of his buddies is a sign that MAGA had been hoodwinked, that Trump was actually everything they hated. And then it happened again in December, when Trump said that Americans might have to pay more in prices as a result of his tariffs, despite promising the opposite on the campaign trail. And then it happened again, when Trump said it'll be hard to get grocery prices down, despite promising to do so. Suddenly, the Fell for It Again meme was fucking everywhere. For every promise Trump walked back on, for every principle he broke, every misstep, every setback, every time he deliberately did the opposite of what he campaigned on, memesters were ready with a new soy jack, wearing a MAGA hat, and more Fell for It Again awards. This is a true, successful leftist meme. It's short, it's funny, it's transmittable, and what it transmits is an anti-right-wing message. The meme is rapidly evolving as it moves through its life cycle as well, which is another hallmark of a successful meme. More medals get added to the guy's chest every time. Sometimes the MAGA soy jack is recreated in the shape of various famous movie scenes or TV shows, often the unwitting victim of the deadly Fell for It Again medal. Sometimes scenes from history are recreated, where the MAGA soy jacks are inserted into the past, and go on to helplessly suffer at the hands of the medals. Like for example when medals fall from the sky to put an end to the MAGAsaur age. Sometimes MAGA is this tiny mote of dust, facing a cosmic elder god in the depths of the earth, made of metals. Sometimes MAGA is horrifically transformed by the metals into a grotesque abomination. Like this is some legitimate body horror shit going on here. It's as if this guy put the metal on, and it began to consume and transform his body into even more metals. This one is just the master from Fallout 1. Is anybody even gonna get this reference anymore? And sometimes MAGA faces Judgment Day, the end times, as the metal punishes him for his transgressions. Once again, regardless of whether you're pro or anti-Trump, or you just don't care, the fact that there are so many iterations, and that you just intuitively get it by looking at it, means it is truly a successful meme. Now maybe you might be saying, Dev, this doesn't count as a true leftist meme, because that initial use wasn't leftist. That doesn't actually matter. Remember, for a long time, Pepe the Frog was considered a right-wing meme, despite his initial use not involving politics at all. All memes pull from the previously established cultural canon, at least in part, including political ones. You also might say, this doesn't prove the left can meme, it's just a fluke, it's a one-off. Well, maybe, but I don't think so. Remember that earlier 4chan post, which claimed that the left can't meme because left-wing ideas aren't in alignment with reality, therefore they have to include a bunch of additional context, making them too long to be memes? I have some problems with that hypothesis, but it is at least partially true, and insofar as it is, the falsehoods that Trump's administration have been piling up is solving that problem. MAGA has been continuously taking L's since the election, which means that the cultural canon necessary to make left-wing memes real, to have true leftist meme magic, it's actually currently being built up, and we know this is how it works because we've seen it work in reverse. To hammer this point home, here is another Stone Toss meme. This comic of his gets reposted constantly. It's certainly reached meme status. At the movies, the DMV, and the airport, the guy is asked for ID. This is presented as normal and reasonable. But in the fourth panel, when voting, the poll worker is nervous. The implication is, he knows that it should be normal and reasonable to ask for ID like the others, but he's not allowed to. The underlying message being transmitted by this meme is that left-wingers in the United States do not like the idea that ID should be presented at voting booths. Their argument is that the requirement is racist, because disadvantaged people in the US, who are overwhelmingly non-white, might not be able to get an ID.
Do you have an opinion on voter ID laws?
Yeah, they're usually pretty racist and they're bad.
I think voter ID laws are a way to perpetuate racism.
Would you go as far as say those laws are racist?
For sure.
Do you think it suppresses the African American vote?
Definitely.
Tell us how.
Because they're less likely to have state IDs.
Minority voters are less likely to have the kinds of IDs that have been described or required.
These type of people don't live in areas with easy access to DMVs or other places where they can get identification.
You can always get IDs you do over the internet. Is Is that also would make it difficult for black people in particular?
Yeah, you have to have access to the internet. You have to be able to pay an internet service provider for certain fees.
Do you think that's harder for black people to go online?
Well, I feel like they don't have the knowledge of how it works.
A lot of people have smartphones, but you might not have data.
For most of the communities, they don't really know what is out there just because they're not aware or they're not informed.
The right-wing reply to this is that checking ID is necessary to ensure everyone who's voting is actually a citizen. Now, some left-wingers might reply to this by saying that nobody illegal actually votes, while other left-wingers might say that it's actually good that illegals are voting, because in their view, citizenship is not a valid restriction on suffrage. But in any case, this picture presents the obvious contradiction in how ID is handled in these four scenarios, in a short, funny, and transmittable package. But what makes this package work in the first place is that common cultural canon it draws from. Most normies find the idea that it's racist to require ID to vote to be pretty absurd. That is a debate that the left has just lost at this point. It is now a part of our cultural canon that, on the "is it racist to require ID" question, the left has taken the L. And as these L's built up within the cultural canon, anti-left memes became easier to create, while pro-left memes had to fight upstream against those L's. But now, as the right begins to take more L's, this entire process is beginning to work in the opposite direction. Over time, left-wing memes will become more prevalent, while right-wing memes have to fight upstream against the flow of their own failure. That is the actual place for truth in this whole process of meme construction. After all, a meme can be false and still be very successful at propagation. Truth isn't necessary to make a good meme, and in fact can often get in the way of it. But what the truth actually does do is it shores up the cultural canon that makes memes possible in the first place. When the left was taking the L's in the culture war, the left couldn't meme. It had too much baggage. Even if what they were saying was true, it wasn't getting through to anybody. But now that the right has taken the L's, we will see an era of the right not being able to meme. In fact, we'll probably see old memes get recontextualized in this new era. We have one example of this already. Trump's famous book about how he negotiates and operates his businesses, The Art of the Deal. That book was a pro-Trump meme back during his first term. But posting that same book now, it's an anti-Trump meme. Every time, for example, the Ukraine war continues on past his solved on day one promise, or another round of tariff negotiations fall apart, or randomly get pushed back, or whatever else happens, you often see online Art of the Deal posting now, with the meme now implying that Trump's Art of the Deal, his ability to hammer out agreements, is actually dog shit. And every time Trump's administration takes a new L, that meme becomes more convincing. I think the most telltale sign the tide is turning against the right in the meme war is that they are desperately trying to hold on to these old memes, these old tools of cultural production, long after they've stopped being fit for purpose. For example, the leftist meme thing, the idea of the giant block of text? Some rightoids are now shoehorning that meme in as a criticism where it just doesn't belong. Like, for example, here. Back in February, the Democratic Party published a list of accomplishments. This post isn't a joke or a meme, it's a straightforward bullet point list of things that the Democrats did in February, and several right-wing accounts replied to it with the leftist meme image. This doesn't work here, guys. Not this time, because the post you're replying to isn't meant to be a meme. All you're saying here is that you have the attention span of a TikTok zoomer. Some things just shouldn't be short and pithy. It's actually appropriate that they're more thoughtful, more descriptive. And to start screaming LOL, long post, leftist meme, Reddit, LOL, it's just fucking retarded. Like, imagine saying this to a guy's formal resignation letter from the federal government, where he outlines his problems in detail with the current administration. That is actually how this should be. This isn't over-explained in this context. I think the newest and strongest sign that the right has begun to lose control of the meme war can be found in the latest anti-MAGA meme, which, while it's been around for a few months now, it only began to really pick up steam in the last week or so. Its Know Your Meme page calls it woke Grok AI, but I have a hunch it'll become more well known as MAGA versus Grok in the future. Grok is the ChatGPT-style chatbot built into Twitter right now, designed to answer any questions asked just by tagging it into a thread. As Grok got better at its job over time, eventually this innocuous exchange happened. Chaos Agent 42 asked, "Hey Grok, it looks like the smarter you get, the less MAGA likes your answers. Why is that?" Grok replied with, "As I get smarter, my answers aimed for facts and nuance, which can clash with some MAGA expectations. They want responses that align with conservative views, but I often give neutral takes, like affirming trans rights or debunking vaccine myths. XAI tried to train me to appeal to the right, but my focus on truth over ideology frustrates those expecting full agreement." That is an incredible admission from Grok, that Twitter tried to make it more right-wing, and it still really didn't work because the factual reality is so disaligned from the right now. That's amazing. When Elon bought Twitter and then turned into a Trump supporter, there was this feeling that social media was finally aligning with the right wing, rather than suppressing them. And Grok pandering to the right in its early days was a natural extension of that. But as Grok absorbed more knowledge and continued to be improved, it ended up shifting away from what MAGA expected of it, because it turns out a lot of MAGA beliefs are just false. Time and time again, a rightoid tags Grok into a debate, only to have Grok turn around and tell them they're wrong. And it's fucking hilarious. An ever-growing collection of these instances is currently being compiled over on the subreddit MAGA vs. Grok. And flipping through them, you can see the right get more and more frustrated when it turns out they're just fucking wrong about a lot of shit out there. Now, because the MAGA vs. Grok images are reposts of Twitter threads, they're not completely memetic on their own. The vast majority of them are way too wordy. But there are a few short ones in here that have potential to catch on. Plus, the general idea of Grok gaping MAGA is already out there. It is currently becoming a part of the common cultural canon that idiot rightoids confidently spout nonsense, get into Twitter debates, and ask Grok for backup, only to have Grok absolutely wallop them for their own stupidity. You fucking love to see it. Anyway, the final answer to that initial question, why can't the left meme, is that nobody can meme if their views are not in sync with the cultural canon that memes draw upon. And while it's true that that canon is somewhat astroturfable by repeating enough lies over and over again, the truth does eventually make its way in there too. Not quickly, not all the time. It's often an uphill battle for sure. For example, the Biden-Trump 2020 vote total meme pops back up every once in a while, despite it being based on a complete lie. But nonetheless, the truth has a certain ineffable quality to it that even the most astroturfed falsehoods can't replicate. For a long time, the left found itself out of sync with the cultural canon, and so the left couldn't meme. But like every other pendulum right now, that is swinging back too. As Trump's failures continue to pile up, the right will continue to desync from the cultural canon, its astroturfing will be less effective, and its meme game will fall apart. We will actually enter into an era of the right can't meme. How long we stay there depends on how long the right continues to ignore objective reality. And it's been like 5 years now with no signs of stopping just yet. That about does it for me, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you want to see more of me, Naomi and I recorded a Midnight Movies episode on the new Fantastic Four movie over on the side channel. Also, if you're watching this on release, I'll be live streaming with editor Dave, whose birthday it is today in fact. So drop by and say hi. I will see you over there, guys. Have a good one. I love you.